Okay, talk soon.
Hey guys, it's Ethan Ainsworth again. I wanted to play a little bit of Spider-Man, and I wanted to talk about comic books and comic book news a little bit. So I figured this would be the best way to do it. Sort of wanted to do an easy format where I didn't have to edit anything or set up my scene or anything like that. I just sort of wanted to kick back and talk a little bit about what's been going on in the comic book world. It's like 4:45 in the morning. I've been up all night, so I don't know. I don't know how coherent I'm going to be, and I don't expect anybody to watch this um, right at this moment. But yeah, as I'm recording this, it's really early or late, or however that works. But I wanted to talk about Watchmen. Watchmen's looking pretty good. They uh, they released a featurette really recently, and I'm excited about that. It looks really good. Honestly, I wasn't excited about it. It's in my opinion, Watchmen is one of those things where it's like if you're not going to adapt it, you should probably just leave it alone. Like it's one of those sacred grounds in DC, and it's kind of like unethical because they misled Morrison into believing that he was going to be oh, that he was going to be in control of Watchmen and he was going to own the characters. But you know, like I was saying, they misled him, and so Watchmen doesn't own any of those characters, and so any sort of financial support on those properties is kind of like an injustice to Moore as a creator and as a person and as somebody who's an owner of intellectual property. But you know, whatever. But I saw the featurette that was posted that sort of outlined what the plot was going to be. I thought it was really interesting. I know Alan Moore hates it, but I think, I think it looks really good. What am I supposed to do with this guy again? I don't even remember. Oh, that did it. But it looks good. They sort of explain why the police are wearing masks and what's going on with the Rorschachs, or whatever they're called. Hooded Justice was in the featurette for some reason, even though, so it's got to be like a different version of that character because he died before the original story took place in '85. But yeah, so evidently it's supposed to be a world where there's no social media, no internet, etc., etc. I think it's a really interesting take on like society with superheroes in it, and I'm not one for grim and gritty takes on the superhero world very often. I think Watchmen is one of the exceptions where it's quite good. I killed those birds. I think Watchmen is one of those exceptions where it ends up being really good, but overall I'm just not a fan of that sort of thing if it's too cynical. But Watchmen looks really good so far, like at least what I've seen. Oh, boom. But basically, the world is such that there's like everything has gone rampant and it's dangerous to even sort of be out there. And so the reason the cops wear masks is to protect their identities and to protect their family, kind of like how superheroes do it in the comic book. So it's sort of like, I feel like it's trying to dissect the argument of having a secret identity and what that means in terms of honesty, what that means in terms of like morality and accountability for the sort of brand of justice you decide to inflict upon others, or in fact the injustice oftentimes that you bestow upon others. But yeah, I think that's what it's trying to dissect, and I think that's a really interesting subject matter. Hopefully it's done right and it's done tastefully, but I mean, we'll see. I feel like a lot of people misunderstand Watchmen as like intentionally over cynical, but like you have to understand that Watchmen was in a isolation when it came out. It's not like it's not where it's not what things are now, where they do things just to do things. I think that's a problem with a lot of media nowadays. It wasn't in the sort of culture we have now. It was in a time where there was sort of not many deconstructions of our media at all. It was just presented to us as what it was. So Spider-Man was Spider-Man, Superman was Superman, and nobody questioned it. And Watchmen was sort of one of those first things to actually offer a different perspective on the genre. So that's why I feel like Watchmen is sort of exempt from, or at least the original piece, Watchmen, is sort of exempt from the rule of being like overly cynical for no reason. Oh my god, the ragdoll physics in this game. Oh, that was sad. You know what they say about LP tax? You know, it really gets you. You're in the heat of things. You're trying to talk about the philosophy of a genre, a piece of literary fiction. Anyway, but yeah, no, I think I think it looks good, and I think it is. I mean, whether Alan Moore feels it is or not, I feel like it is in a very similar vein to the original Watchmen series. It seems to be that same sort of genre of critique, if I can call it that. Can't ignore it. Whee! So yeah, I'm fairly excited for Watchmen as it stands right now. I wasn't previously, but we'll see how it is. I might pirate it. Like I have this. I think I have the service it's going to be on, but I think I might just pirate it, like out of principle, so that I'm not financially supporting it in any way. But I guess maybe one could argue the moral judgment would just be not watch it at all if that's the case. But I don't know. I'll have to have a think about that. But it looks good if I decide to watch it. It looks like I might enjoy it. I may enjoy it, rather. A long tube filled with demons. Ooh. Hey-o. Next in news, we've got like Haley Steinfeld being offered the role, allegedly being offered the role of Kate Bishop Hawkeye in the Hawkeye miniseries coming to Disney Plus. I think she's a really great choice because I really like Haley Steinfeld. I think she's a terrific actress, and I believe she played Spider-Gwen in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. But yeah, no, I think she's a terrific actress, and I'd love to see her in the role. I think she's a little too old, but she can pull off a competent teenager, as we saw in Bumblebee. But damn it. But you know, I don't know. We'll see. If she is Kate Bishop, I will gladly accept that. But if she's not, I'll be okay with that too, because I think she's maybe a little old for the role. Depending on one, how old Kate Bishop is supposed to be in this, and you know how faithfully they can portray a teenager, or how accurately she can be like. I mean, I don't know what she really looks like IRL, like normally. So I don't know if she can play. She's like 25 though, isn't she? So I feel like that's a little bit old to be playing a teenager. I think 21 is probably the limit for most actors playing teenagers. Otherwise, you get weird stuff like Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire playing, you know, like a 17, 18-year-old Peter Parker. But, you know, whatever. Tom Holland's like 21 or 22, and he plays a really faithful teenager. So we'll see how it is. I really like Haley Steinfeld. I'd like to see her in the role, providing she's convincing as a, a 16-year-old kid, or however old Kate Bishop is supposed to be in the series. Um, so yeah, I'm excited for the Hawkeye series in general. I really like Jeremy Renner. I really like Hawkeye as a character for the most part. Um, and I like Kate Bishop for the most part as well. I think she's really misused a lot of times, but I think she can be quite a charming character, quite a likable character, when written correctly. But we'll see how that goes. Oh, there's literally nothing I could do about that. Uh, but basically, I never know. I don't ignore crimes in this game ever. I just always act in it because that's what Spider-Man would do. So I try to play the game accurately. Otherwise, why are you even, doing it?
So you know that address you gave me? I went there.
MJ.
I know, but wait.
What is this?
Just listen.
I don't hate these MJ levels like a lot of people do, but I'm definitely not in love with them. The Miles missions are a little more fun.
The address Pete found. Men are all carrying firearms. What is this place?
Oh, this is Tombstone's crib, so to speak. Oh, what the hell?
What dumbass can't put their shit away?
I can't. I don't have a taser yet. Forgot. I mean, this is kind of like idiotic in a way. Like the way that this is like. There's suspension of disbelief, of course, in video games, especially with stealth. But like this is just, it borders on ludicrous at best. Like how these characters wouldn't be seen.
What are they building? Is this all for Lee?
Are these the Dig Boys? I don't think they're the Dig Boys. Oh, what the hell? Weird ass spider sense for Mary Jane. I mean, right? Like, is this not ridiculous? Anyway. I mean, these missions are amusing, and they're like straight up, like that guy just looked at me. I don't know, like, anyway, these missions can be fun, and I have enjoyed playing through them. They can get very tense at times, but it's just they go on for too long is my problem. Like, really? That guy didn't see me? Like, you kidding me with that? Is that not ridiculous? Long tube filled with demons? Like, he just looked at me. Anyway, what was I saying? The next piece of news is a rumor about, oh, okay. MJ's dead. Next rumor is about Ironheart. Ugh. I really, God, I hope this isn't true. Like, you don't understand how much, or maybe you do. Maybe you do understand how much I just don't want this to be a thing. But there's rumors about an Ironheart TV show for Disney Plus. It's like, what does this do? I forget what this does. I think it turns off. Okay. What? They teleported, but okay. Anyway, there's rumors about an Ironheart miniseries on Disney Plus, and that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be back in it as like the AI voice inside her suit, a la Jarvis, like he is in the Invincible Iron Man Ironheart run. I think that's ridiculous. It's fucking stupid. Because it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, okay, so Ironheart's like 15, right? We already established that Peter Parker is Tony's heir, right? Like, even if he's not in the MCU right now, like he almost definitely will be again in the future. And we've established him as the rightful heir to the Stark legacy. Like, not that he needs to be Iron Man, or that he should be, because he definitely shouldn't be, but he is the only one arguably competent enough to eventually fill that role,
Officer Speed to my right.
aside from Reed Richards.
Through here.
Uh, so I mean, like, first of all, you're contradicting your own character arcs here. Tony Stark saw Peter Parker as not only an equal, but a worthy successor, as a superior, potentially, as he grew. Alchemax, this is a reference to Spider-Man 2099, and it shouldn't exist yet, but whatever.
Alchemax.
But Tony Stark saw Peter Parker as being better than him
What's in these?
someday. He saw Spider-Man as being the best of humanity, the best of the superhero community, and someday being better than he ever could have been. Both as like an intellectual, as a scientist, and as a hero and a person. And like Happy Hogan said himself, Tony wouldn't have done what he did in Endgame if he didn't know that Peter Parker was going to be there to someday fill that role, that absence that he's leaving, and not only the superhero community but the world. But anyway, so also, like, when would Iron Man have time to have done that before Endgame? Why wouldn't he have given the AI Tony to Peter, since he gave him Edith? And where did Riri get her suit, unless he set it aside for her somehow, which wouldn't make sense either? Where did she get the AI, which wouldn't make sense either, even if he left it aside for her? That would be stupid and wouldn't make any sense. And the character's just awful and has never been written well. She's never, ever been written well, as far as I can tell. She's been written poorly in Champions, in my opinion. She's been written poorly in Inferior Iron Man. In Infamous Iron Man. She was written poorly in Invincible Iron Man, and she was written poorly in Ironheart. She's never been, to my knowledge, written even remotely competently. I think the best she's ever been written was in Infamous Iron Man, because she wasn't there for very long. But even while she was there, she was completely insufferable. I mean, this character is a sociopath. She's a narcissist, like, not in the same charming way that Iron Man was arguably a narcissist, or arguably a charming narcissist. Because it's not played off well. She genuinely thinks that she's better than everybody else. Yeah, she's a bad person and a bad hero. She takes over a country at one point. She takes over like an entire nation of people, and declares herself the queen. And she wants people to discriminate against her so that she can feel like she has something like to go up against or something, I guess. She's insane. She's insane. She insisted that her teachers oppress her for being black. Like, it's fucking, it's insane. It's ludicrous the way Bendis seems to perceive the world and perceives people in general. But how would MJ have that suit of Peter Parker? He in the game's continuity, he's only gotten that suit maybe 2 days ago. So why would she have the advanced suit plushie of Spider-Man? Unless she like updated her Spider-Man plushie somehow, like when she saw Peter swinging around on the news or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, no, Riri Williams is a shittily written character. She doesn't belong in the MCU, and she doesn't even belong in comic books because she's so awful. She really needs a revamp, I think. She needs like a competent writer to go in there and to just like try to fix her. And if not, it's just time to retire the character. I'm like, we should be done with these characters just piggybacking off of legacies of pre-existing superheroes and just calling themselves whatever they want. Like, I'm alright with Miss Marvel. I think she's she's been written well and she's been written poorly. She's been written to be insufferable. She's been written to be charming.
You don't think this has anything to do with
Nonetheless, she doesn't have any relating powers to or to the original Miss Marvel or to Captain Marvel. At least Miles Morales was bitten by the spider. He was part of that world, and he had the blessing of Spider-Man and his family. So that's completely, that's a completely different situation. Miss Marvel didn't ever meet, or she didn't know any of the superheroes. She showed up one time in a Miss Marvel book or a Captain Marvel book. Her superpowers don't relate. She didn't have permission. She just declared herself the new Miss Marvel, and people sort of like just got on with it. Nobody questioned it. But her origins don't at all tie in with Miss Marvel. She's not even the same like race as I almost called her Brie Larson. She's not even the same race as Carol Danvers. She's an Inhuman, and Carol is a Kree. So like, at least if you're a Kree, you could argue that you have a similar like background and you have like dibs on a title like Marvel, because the original Captain Marvel was a Kree soldier, and Carol Danvers had rights to that title because she was like a valued friend of the original Captain Marvel. But like in the case of Kamala Khan, she didn't know Captain Marvel. She's not a Kree. She's never been to the Kree homeworld. She doesn't have any powers that even remotely relate to Captain Marvel. So it just doesn't make any sense that she would call herself Miss Marvel. I think she could have called herself literally anything else and it would have made more sense. As long as she didn't call herself like, Spider-Man or Captain America or something, you know what I mean? If she had called herself like the elongated lass or something like that, or Morpho, or literally anything that wasn't a pre-existing legacy title that made no sense to her, that would have been fine. I'm off on a bit of a tangent though, but I think my point is out there. I think I've illustrated it. But at this point I'm just going on, so I'm gonna move on to the next thing, and that's rumors again of potentially Spider-Man being canceled or the number of Spider-Man titles at Marvel being reduced. I don't know how much legitimacy I would lend this. I would kind of like to see it happen, if I'm honest. I think there are too many Spider people in the Marvel universe. I think there's a lot of reason not to have multiple of the same character if it's more than like two. Because up until recently, Peter Parker was a very unique character. Spider-Man was a wholly unique character that existed in isolation, but in the Marvel Universe. That is to say, there were no other characters running around bearing his name aside from Spider-Woman, who has no relation to him in terms of like really powers. She has the ability to stick the walls, but she has no like real relation to Peter Parker at all, and no affiliation. So it wasn't really like a problem. But these characters that are running around now, like 2099, I have no problem with. He's a future adaptation of Spider-Man. As long as he stays in his universe, in his part of time as well, I don't mind. I'd like the occasional crossover. But, he's just been showing up in the 616 lately. Like, he's not even from the 616 universe. He's from, like, 829 or something like that, 928, some variation thereof. He's not from 616, but he keeps showing up in 616 like he's part of that future, even though he's definitively not. And he just showed up again recently in like the last issue of Amazing Spider-Man. So like whatever, I don't care for that. I like Miguel O'Hara a lot. I think he's a great character. Don't like that he's showing up every 2 seconds. I feel like if you want to tell a Miguel O'Hara story again, just give him a mini-series and let Peter David write it. Don't just shove him in Peter Parker's book. But yeah, no, I think there's too many Spider-Man books. I think there's too many books that even like follow Peter Parker. I think we only need 1 or 2 books tops that follow Peter Parker at any given time. And once in a while, I mean like once in a while, a miniseries. I think if we could reduce it down to Miles Morales, call it Ultimate Spider-Man again, put it back in the Ultimate Universe, because that's the only place where Miles Morales is relevant. I really love Miles Morales as a character. I really love his stories, and I really love the Ultimate Universe. I don't think he fits in the 616. I don't think he is important in the 616. I don't think he's a relevant character in the 616. I think he's more interesting in a universe where Peter Parker is dead and he's filling a vacuum. I don't like he is a redundancy in the Marvel universe. There's like 17 Spider-Men, and it's just not necessary. It's completely stupid, and they just did it to clear out another continuity. Which, by the way, they've been like teasing about a return, and Ultimate number 250 just came out, or Miles Morales Spider-Man number 10 just came out, whatever you want to call it. I haven't read it yet because it hasn't been delivered to my house as of right now, but I'll get to it probably the first week of October. I think that's the right thing to do. I think you should just put him in 1610 and stop like screwing with continuity, because it's really unclear what they acknowledge is happening and what they don't. Because at the end of Secret Wars, Miles remembers everything from his universe, and then they try to like retcon his origin in a really stupid way and a really meaningless way, and then they just bring back his uncle and his parents and everything like that for no reason other than the fact that he was in a movie, seemingly. And it's, you know, it's really sad, I think, because that character has a really interesting story, a really interesting backstory, really interesting, you know, fairly long-standing series, and I think it's slowly being undone, not only by new writers, but by the writer who created the character himself, Bendis, sort of, in the first 2 volumes of the Miles Morales series in the 616 from 2015, he undoes a little bit of what he did in the Ultimate Universe for that character, and he plays a little bit fast and loose with some of the continuity, and you're not really sure what you're supposed to think happened and what you're not supposed to think happened. I think that's really, really sad, and it makes me sad, and it makes me depressed as a comic book reader, because I care about these characters, I care about their story, and I care about their continuity, and I want their legacy, their stories to be intact. I want the legacy and the mythos of Miles Morales, who's a very worthy character in the Marvel mythos, to be intact. I want him to be the character he's supposed to be. I don't want him to be like this hollow shell of Miles Morales. I want him to be Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man. Do you know what I mean? Oh, hey, how's it going, viewer? I didn't expect anybody to watch because it's like 5 o'clock in the morning where I am. But yeah, I think Miles should be left in his own universe. I think he's a terrific character, and he's just not done justice in the 616. He's a redundancy. So I think the reduction of Spider-Man characters or Spider-Man books could do that, could have a very positive effect on the Marvel Universe, or on those characters. There are too many Spider characters. I'd like to see I'd like to see Superior Spider-Man continue. I think that's a pretty good series so far. I, of course, love the original one. I know a lot of people don't because it relies on a lot of characters being stupid, and I agree with that. But, I also think that it was a really good arc for the character of Otto Octavius. I think a lot of the characters were written well. A lot of it was dealt with in a very unique way. It was something we hadn't really seen before, and it was emotionally impactful. And it served the character of Peter Parker, inevitably. And the new series has been very good too. It's a little weird, it's a little strange, in my opinion, but it's, you know, it's been quite good. We get some really heart-touching moments with technically he's not Otto Octavius, he's like a backup of Otto Octavius' consciousness, or a backup of a backup if you want to get into it. But nonetheless, I've enjoyed it thoroughly thus far. I'm enjoying the outing storyline so far as well, where Otto Octavius has been sort of outed as the San Francisco Spider-Man. There's this really annoying running joke where he insists that his name is the Superior Spider-Man and everybody just calls him the San Francisco Spider-Man. That irritates me because, I mean, wasn't this version of Otto technically, but Otto fully admitted that he was the inferior Spider-Man and that Peter Parker was the obvious choice for Spider-Man. He's just better in every way. He's a better person. He's smarter. He knows how to handle things better. He's just more skilled on every level. So I don't have a problem with Otto being a Spider-Man. I think characters need to evolve and change over time. I do have a problem with him calling himself the Superior Spider-Man, though. Nonetheless, I'd like to see maybe 1 or 2 Peter Parker books. You can have, like, Amazing and then Spectacular if you really want. You can have Ultimate, but have Miles in his own universe, in my opinion, where he can be a meaningful character who can build his own legacy rather than just being the other Spider-Man. I think that you should get rid of all other Spider-Man books, though. Like, keep Gwen in her own universe. You can have that book, I suppose. I've enjoyed Spider-Gwen historically. I haven't been reading it lately because I can't afford to read 18,000 Spider books. But you can have that. Like, that's only tangentially Spider-Man. And just, like, sort of leave it at that. That's all we need. We don't need any sort of clone books. I really love the character Ben Reilly. We don't need any clone books, though. Just leave him off for a little while. I don't think they should have brought him back. I think he died a meaningful death, and Dan Slott was being really disrespectful to the character by bringing him back as a psychopath, basically. The whole clone conspiracy is just garbage. I did like a 20-minute video on it one time where I just talked about all the things I hated about it. But yeah, no, get rid of any clone books. There's no clone books right now, but just don't do that, please. For at least for a few years. Just leave it alone. No Spider-Man 2099 for now, please. Just let it be. Like, we get it. Miguel O'Hara had his story. It's over. You know, we just saw him last year, I think it was, in Spider-Geddon. So we don't need to see him every 2 seconds. He's amazing right now. Like, just let him be. Let Peter Parker be Spider-Man. Like, you know what I mean? We don't need 18,000 Spider-Men. Like, just... Also, if Otto Octavius could be called something other than Spider-Man, that would be great as well. Like, you just call him the Spider, or something like that. Just literally anything aside from Spider-Man would be great. I think Peter Parker should be Spider-Man in the 616. You can have Miles Morales. I love Miles Morales. Keep him in his own universe. That's the only place he makes sense. The only place where his storyline makes sense. Because there's just too much continuity, too much contradiction. I think you put him in the 616. In my opinion, though, I've been like, I don't know. I've been feeling pretty morbid, I guess, about comics lately. Just a lot of, cynical decision making corporately. I think there should be less Spider-Man titles. I do think if they are doing it, they're doing it for the wrong reason, and that's never good. You never want to... art should never be... I totally get the bottom line argument. I totally do, and it's important. But if you make good stories for the sake of good stories, you will make money, inevitably. I mean, that's just how it is with popular media. And I think you're making a really bad decision by doing stuff for editorial or financial mandate. I think inevitably you will dilute the quality of what you're doing, and I think that's, by and large, the main reason comic books are suffering right now. I think if we were a more honest industry, if we were a less cynical industry, that didn't do stuff just to do stuff for political reasons or purely financial reasons, and we just told excellent stories for the sake of telling excellent stories, we would not be in the just the awful, atrocious state we're in comic books right now, financially. Because I know, like, most of the comic book readers I know that have stopped reading comics for these reasons. And these are, like, people who have contributed to comic books immensely on the financial side of things. Some of them are even creators. I've met creators of comic books who are just sort of done with the way things are dealt with in comics. Why am I kicking the door inwards and it's popping out? That's just happened twice now. But like, I don't want to name any names, but I've met a few creators who feel that way, like actual honest to goodness comics pros. Oh shit. Who feel the same way I do about it, and I think it's really depressing. I mean, when you have your creators feeling cynically about comic books, I don't know, man. I mean, obviously, creators have always felt that way, but it's been a different thing. It hasn't been about the substance of the material. It's always been about being screwed over financially or with the rights of a character. It's always been a very personal thing. But like in the cases I talk about, it's about content of story. I will mention one person I've talked to who feels sort of down on modern comics for a lot of reasons, creative and otherwise, because I think he's pretty open about it from what I've heard from him. Ed Piskar, who, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but who wrote X-Men Grand Design. He's sort of feeling very like, he's kind of down on modern comics as well for a lot of decisions, creative, and just the way things are done nowadays in comics. And I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, but I think he's been pretty open on cartoonist kayfabe about that, and just in general. I didn't even check to see if he was safe. I just sort of webbed him up. Let's see here. But then again, I mean, you can look at it this way. He's also a Rob Liefeld fan, so you know. Sorry, Ed. Oh. Do you make noise? No, that's a tree. Do you make noise, Cushion? Apparently so. I don't know how. Okay. That's all I really had to talk about. I'll keep ranting until I'm finished this mission, just so you can see it play out and all that. But yeah, that's sort of how I've, been feeling lately, and I hate that I feel that way. I really do. I want comics to be good. I want them to be genuinely, honest to goodness, good storytelling. But I mean, like, and they are oftentimes. I don't want to be that guy who just hates on modern comics for the sake of it. There are genuinely good stories and characters in comics from every company out there right now. But I feel like more often than not, things are done for the wrong reason right now. And maybe that's been the case a lot of times historically. In the 90s, it's certainly been the wrong case. Or it's certainly been the case that oftentimes things were done for the wrong reasons. And, I mean, as I think everybody knows, the comic book industry more than suffered for it. It's the great comic crash we all talk about. The fact is, though, that our numbers in the comic book industry are far worse right now than they ever were in the comic book crash era of the 1990s. The comic book crash we're going through right now is hitherto unheard of. It's insane. It's unparalleled by any period in comic history, probably even back in the 50s with the whole seduction of the innocent scandal. I think comic books were probably selling far better and you can't use like media as an excuse for that. I mean, that's not a valid excuse for saying like an industry isn't doing as well as it should be doing. Comic books are arguably the most influential source in modern culture. I mean, every movie, every TV show is based off a comic book now. And I don't think there's much argument against comic books being the most influential thing in modern culture. How do I don't remember how to... Anyway. What I'm saying is, during the early 90s, when comics were at their peak financially, this was like when video games were starting to hit the mainstream in a major way. So I don't, and obviously TV and movies were a massive thing at the time too. So I don't think saying that like the advent of social media or the advent of YouTube is a valid excuse for the comic book industry doing just so atrociously the last few years. Especially since up until 2015, comic books were like on the rise financially, and since they've dropped to like an almost infinitesimal fraction of what they were prior to that. So I mean, how different are we culturally in terms of like what we have accessible to us in terms of media today than we were in 2015? It's been 4 years. Do you know what I mean? And in those 4 years, we've seen unparalleled drops in sales and in returns financially.
About Devil's Breath?
How do you know about that?
Why do they want it?
I don't even know what it is. Mr. Osborn's informed me.
This guy is the hipsteriest, New Yorkiest man I've ever seen. I mean, like,
Not anymore.
we're not on the west side, we're near Hell's Kitchen. Or sorry, we're not on the east side, we're near Hell's Kitchen. But this guy looks like he's from the east side. Do you know what I mean? He looks like he's from the Upper East Side of New York. Or like Chelsea. He looks like he's from Chelsea, I guess, even.
Come on, come on!
Yeah, I feel like that's something you could have said, you know, a couple seconds sooner, Pete. Don't die, maybe? Oh, this is a great scene cinematically. This has a lot of parallels to the Gwen Stacy scene in Spider-Man 3. I think that's one of the best done scene. I think that's a gorgeous scene. I think it's one of the best done scenes in terms of just like action composition in the Raimi trilogy, despite the fact that it's like the objectively worst film in that series. Whether, I mean, Spider-Man 3 has some good qualities. Like, it's undeniable, and people who say that Spider-Man 3 is the honest-to-goodness worst movie ever, they're not being intellectually honest with themselves or with anybody else. I mean, you can't look at that film visually. You can't look at, like, some of the ways the story is told. Obviously, there's some garbage. There's some real hot, steaming garbage. But you can't look at that film the way it's shot, the way certain scenes are written, the way it's composed, that there's no heart in that film, that there's no redeeming qualities. I mean, the way it's... The CGI was, like, at the time, insane. And I would argue that the Sandman scene still holds up. And indeed, the swinging scenes with Spider-Man. So you look at that film and you honestly say there's no heart in that film. I don't think... And there's no redeeming qualities in that film. I honestly think you're not being fair, not being objective. We're so far off. I mean, this is sort of a ranty video anyway, and it's supposed to be. But yeah, I think I got off my chest everything I sort of wanted to talk about. I hope you did enjoy, providing you, like, you poor bastards sat through the majority or even the entirety of this. And thank you to the person who's watching it live. I didn't expect anybody to do this. I just sort of did it at this time because I felt the urge to make a video, and I thought I could just pass it off as like a video without anybody. I mean, obviously it's a stream first, but I thought I could just pass it off as a video without even anybody noticing. But yeah, no, I appreciate it, bud. And tune in, because I've got more stuff coming on the way, and I've got an interview with Black Cat and Man Without Fear writer Jed MacKay in the next episode of Knights of Marvel podcast. We're going to talk about Daredevil, in a classic issue Daredevil where he encounters Madcap, and who's actually really important to the backstory of Deadpool. Funny enough. But yeah, so tune into that. That should be out next Sunday, if all if all goes well. It'll be out next Sunday, okay? I'll make it my personal responsibility to make sure that that episode is out there by next Sunday. But yeah, tune in the Knights of Marvel podcast. I've got some really solid stuff coming up. I've got some. I did an interview with Jed McKay, obviously. But I've got some little snippets from other creators in the industry, Marvel and otherwise, coming up soon in that show as well. So just hang out and stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you continue to enjoy. And I'll talk to you guys later. And I honestly, if you manage to make it through this, I'm both honored and I'm also I feel guilty that you had to sit through this. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. We've been sitting here for like half an hour, even more. So thanks for tuning in, guys.